Welcome to our lesson for the course Purposive Communication. Now we are moving to the topic of ethics in communication. At the end of this video, you are expected to learn the following. First, the role of ethics in communication. Second, the ethical principles. But before that, let us answer this question. First, what is ethics? You may have heard this word a lot of times, especially during philosophy classes. And I wonder what you mean about this. So ethics is based on well-founded standard of right and wrong that prescribe what human ought to do. In short, this is our guide of actions. Like before doing something, we first consider if it is the right thing to do or it's the wrong thing, and if it's the wrong, then we refuse to do it. And that's the idea of ethics. Now, what is the role of or how do we apply ethics in communication? So, ethics in communication is the judgment we make based on how appropriate our statements, behaviors, and actions in a particular situation. There are situations when we first have to decide what to say. I mean, it's not just we impulsively say something in every situation. Sometimes we are required to think about it. Let's say, for example, you have these close friends who you notice smells bad. In short, I mean, he or she has a bad or odor. You don't just say, hey, you smell bad or something like that. Okay, you still need to think about it. And your actions or your decision is guided by ethics. You try to analyze first what approach or in what way of communication will work. How can I approach this friend of mine without offending him or her about the issue? Okay, so that is how we use ethics in communication. And there are ethical principles of communication that is according to the National Communication Association. It was published in the year 1999. First, it is advocates truthfulness, accuracy, honesty, and reason as essential to the integrity of communication. So, in short, your statement, your behavior, the symbols that you're going to use should advocate truthfulness. It should be fact, truth, accurate, honest, and essential to one's integrity. Second, it endorses freedom of expression, diversity of perspective, and tolerance of dissent to achieve the informed and responsible decision making fundamental to a civil society. Third is condemns communication that degrades individuals and humanity through distortion, intimidation, coercion, and violence, and through this expression of intolerance and hatred. Now we have this freedom of expression, but in this ethical principle of communication, it says that whatever that degrades individuals or the humanity is something that should be condemned, or we do not really encourage, or we do not tolerate this way of communicating. When it ruins or it hurts people, especially if it's intentional, okay, because the consequences here is the entire relationship with the people involved in that process might be ruined. And lastly, it believes that communicators should accept responsibility for the short and long term consequences of our own communication and expect the same of others. Communication involves responsibility, like whatever you say, you're going to face the consequences. If it's positive, then you have the responsibility. You should take the responsibility, and it's more evident when what you said is harmful or degrading. Let's say you intentionally did something or said something to someone, and then you should take the full responsibility of your consequences, be it long term or short term. That is why it is very important that we think a million times before we utter words or be during our communication. Because it's either you ruin the relationship or you improve the relationship. Because we know words are very powerful. Therefore, we should conform with these ethical principles of communication. Although we are privileged to speak up and to communicate with anyone we want to, still, we should have considered the ethics first. If we don't want to face negative consequences of our words, so let me leave you a question. Why is it important to be ethical in communicating, especially today? So what are the consequences if we fail to communicate ethically with the people around us, especially during this time? We know that the way of communicating before is different now.
Next, the seventh is ethical principle of communication. Number one, concreteness.
Concreteness, concrete business communication is also about a clear message. This is often supported by factual materials such as research data and figures. The word used as well as the sentence structure can be interpreted univocally. Nothing is left to the imagination. Concreteness is Concrete communication implies being particular and clear rather than fuzzy and general. Concreteness strengthens the confidence. Concrete message has following features. It is supported with specific facts and figures. It makes use of words that are clear and the build the reputation. Concrete message are not misinterpreted. Completeness. The message must be complete and geared to the receiver's perception of the word. The message must be based on fact, and a complex message needs additional information and/or explanations. A good subdivision of subject will clarify the message, as a result of which there will be a complete overview of what is said. So completeness is to ensure your communication is complete, as if it answered that the when, why, who, where, and how. Example, you have not complete the task that I set you. It's a message full of ambiguity. Correctness, a correct use of the language has a preference in writing business communications. Grammatical error must be avoided and stylistic lapses or a wrong use of verbs are not sufficient either in verbal communication. A correct use of language increases trustworthiness, and thus receiver will feel that they are taken seriously. So correctness is the message is exact, correct, and well timed. If the communication is correct, it boosts up the confidence level. So correct message has greater impact on the audience and also the readers. And also it checks for the precisions and accurateness of facts and figures used in the message. And also it makes use of appropriate and correct language in the message. Courtesy in message implies the message should show the sender expression as well as should respect the receiver. The sender of the message should be sincerely polite, judicious, reflective, and enthusiastic. Courteous message has following features. Courtesy implies taking into consideration both viewpoint as well as feeling of the receiver of the message. Courteous message is positive and focused at the audience, and it makes use of terms showing respect for the receiver of message. It is not all biased.
The next is clarity. Clarity means it completely implies all of the information in specific message and also a goal. So it will not focus and concentrate on something wrong, instead focusing on a direct information and messages, but Completely and clear. Completely because it is clarity you need to complete and also to be clear. Here you need to avoid using creature, have neat faces and also a diagonals, the cliches, hackneyed phrases, and a jargons. Consideration. It implies stepping into shoes of others, so in other words, always try to put yourself in other place. Imagine thinking the way of others think, to step into someone new to understand what the person think and want from us. So we are trying to understand the part and matters, not the way anyone but the way that otherwise. The last one is conciseness. It is the extent to which a piece of writing, communication, clear information in a few words as possible. Again, in a few words as possible, but concise. So here you need to concise information. So in other words, saying more with less. Always remember that concise is better than void, because never words are stronger expression and easy, and also it is easier to understand and to read.